Star Wars 7x7, episode 2258. Today, we're starting our look at the first novel in the new Thrawn trilogy. This is the non-spoiler review of Star Wars, Thrawn Ascendency, open paren, Book 1, Chaos Rising, close paren. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So I dare say this book has the longest title of any Star Wars fiction book, but we will shorten it with Chaos Rising and run with that. This is a non-spoiler review, and here's the funny thing. I'm going to start in a very bizarre place with this. There is a movie back in 1999, I believe it was, called The Limey. It was directed by Steven Soderbergh and written by a guy named Lem Dobbs. And I remember vividly watching the DVD version of it and watching the director and screenwriter commentary because I really enjoyed the movie and I thought they did a lot of really cool visual and editing flashback stuff in it. It was just super intriguing. And there seemed to be this really passive-aggressive discussion happening between Soderbergh and Dobbs, where basically Dobbs was annoyed at the flashback crazy edit things that Soderbergh did with the movie, with his script. And Soderbergh, by extension, felt like the script was kind of thin and needed something in the visual department and the editing department to help kind of beef it up to full movie length and mode. And so that came back to me pretty strongly as I went through both book and audio version of Chaos Rising. And before we go on, I do want to thank Del Rey for sending me a copy of the book to review in advance, and also Penguin Random House Audio for sending me the audiobook version to review in advance. So the reason why that whole Limey story comes up, well, let me circle back to that in a minute. Let's talk about the positives of Chaos Rising. For one thing, what Timothy Zahn sets out to do in Chaos Rising is a lot of world building. So we are pretty much, entirely in the chaos, in the Chiss Ascendency, and in the regions surrounding it. And we are introduced to a number of races and political powers, strategic powers in the general vicinity. That's a lot to throw at you for any reader who is, catching up on an alien species and alien society. I read the Heir to the Empire trilogy way back in the day, and that was the only Thrawn reading I had ever done until the new Thrawn books came out. So I am not steeped in Chiss lore, Chiss society, Chiss politics, or anything like that. So this was all new to me, and I will say that Timothy Zahn does a good job of weaving these details throughout the story, or should I say stories, plural. Because even though this is presented as a novel, it's really kind of a spiritual sibling to Thrawn Alliances, which was the middle book in the first new trilogy of Thrawn novels, if we're going to complicate things even further. That novel, Thrawn Alliances, as you may recall, alternated between a story with Thrawn and Anakin Skywalker and Thrawn and Darth Vader. And so the events of the past had bearing on the events of the present, if you were presuming that his adventures with Darth Vader were the adventures of the present. And a similar thing is happening here in Chaos Rising. There are two interweaving stories, and one of them is marked with chapters, like your standard chapter 1, chapter 2, that sort of thing. That is the storyline that is happening in, the comparative present, right? And then there's a memories set of chapters that are marked off by Roman numerals, memory I, memory II, memory IV, etc., etc. And those are stories that talk about Thrawn's rise through the ranks and also early encounters and engagements that he had, and also his interactions with some aliens and some cultures that ultimately bear on the events that are happening in the present chapter storyline. So basically, I guess, for me, at least in the reading, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't really read like a full novel so much as it reads like two novellas that have been kind of sliced up and, shuffled together like a deck of cards, which is similar to the idea that I was pursuing with the whole bit about the Limey movie, like that he took the script Soderbergh did and basically kind of went and shuffled elements of it and created a very different kind of visual presentation as a result. And there's even a crazier reason for me bringing up Soderbergh and Dobbs, and it's a Star Wars reason too, and I will share that with you later on in the show. Back to Chaos Rising, though, I think the thing that's also kind of coloring my view of the novel is that we talked the other day about Timothy Zahn sharing some of the backstory for the development of this trilogy, and he said that this was given to him as a trilogy from the outset, so he knew it was going to be a 3-book situation and he could plot out arcs in a way that he wasn't able to do with the previous 3 Thrawn novels that he wrote, which would be just Thrawn, and then Thrawn Alliances, and then Thrawn Treason, right? So he had the, full license to, think about everything that was going to happen in the 3 books in Thrawn Ascendency. And this first book doesn't come across as like, a whole story necessarily because of the fact that it is these 2 stories. It's this story of him coming up through the ranks, and it's this story of the current present day situations which deal with another species in the chaos which seems to be making moves to conquer space and territory and races and so forth. And there's another set of aliens that Thrawn tangled with in the past who now may be either under the thrall of this new group, they may be working with them intentionally or under subjugation. That's to be revealed. I think the thing that's also kind of coloring my view about the novel is that we talked about how Timothy Zahn revealed on the day of its release some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, right? And revealed that he was given a trilogy from the get-go. So as he was planning this whole Thrawn Ascendency thing, he got to think about it in a 3-book arc in a way that he wasn't able to do with these 3 previous books, Thrawn and Thrawn Alliances and Thrawn Treason. So the fact that this first book is not really, one whole book, one whole story, but it's really kind of 2 novellas that are shuffled together, that strikes me as a bit odd. But as usual, it's not to say that the book isn't without its pleasures. So Thrawn is, fascinating as we see him developing into the person that we know and love in the later era novels and in Star Wars Rebels. So you get to see, that development, which is part of the whole charm and purpose for this trilogy to begin with. And even though Thrawn is still just as cunning, just as, Sherlockian as he is in other things, we also get a little more vulnerability from him in the earlier days. And I dare say that makes him a little easier to empathize with as a character, even knowing that he becomes a major villain in the Star Wars universe as time goes on. And there's also an interesting choice in that we don't get to get into Thrawn's head in the same way that we did in those first 3 books. So those first 3 books had moments where we are directly in Thrawn's mind and Thrawn is observing particular, whether facial tics or, changes in blood flow to the face or like all these minute little details that he obsesses over that give him additional information about people. Well, we don't really get that, but we still do get the benefit of his observation and analysis. And at this time, or at least, part of the soul story situation, he's actually learning to do the things that he ultimately does so well when we see him on later stories and in Rebels, for example. So we'll talk about more spoilery stuff in episodes to come because they do explore some really cool stuff. And I will say also that the story, the side character stories they're building with Aralani and with a Chiss Skywalker, as in the people who are helping them to navigate through hyperspace, and the caregivers that support those Skywalkers, there's a caregiver and Skywalker pairing that is also very intriguing as well. And so, yeah, we'll dig into all of that stuff. Before I share with you that Star Wars thing with Soderbergh and Dobbs that I wanted to share with you, I do just want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Audible. And once again, it's sw7x7.com/audible to get a free audiobook and free 30-day trial of their service. It's really cool that they let us do that, and it also helps support the show as well. So if it's ever something you've wanted to try, getting a Star Wars story read to you, narrated to you, with all the voices and production values and all that great stuff, head to sw7x7.com/audible and check it out, and thank you for supporting the show. So I just watched another Soderbergh-Dobbs combination movie, which I never thought they would work together again after listening to that DVD commentary. But it was on a movie called Haywire, and Haywire stars Gina Carano of The Mandalorian fame, Cara Dune, and a supporting character in Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that was really kind of fun to see the two of them interacting on screen. And years before Gina Carano would appear in The Mandalorian, years after Obi-Wan shows up in the prequels, but also I guess years before the Kenobi series too. So anyway, it was a decent enough movie also, and I think probably if I listen to the DVD commentary on that, I have a feeling it might similarly be passive-aggressive in the conversation between the two of them, but anyway. So that is the non-spoiler review for Star Wars: Thrawn Ascendency, Book 1, Chaos Rising, and that is going to do it for this episode of the show as well. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.